Hi everyone, this is part 2 of geometric design. The overview of the portions to be covered in this video include negative superelevation or negative cant. Then we will have a comparison between cant efficiency, cant excess and equilibrium cant. Then we will be seeing in detail what are transition curves, what are different types of transition curves and the equations. Then the safe speed. What should be the safe speed of trains negotiating a horizontal curve? So these are the portions which I am planning to cover in this video. Welcome you all to this video. Theoretical cant and cant efficiency we have covered in the previous video. So theoretical cant is a superelevation which is designed for the maximum speed, and the deviation from that is cant efficiency, and actual cant is a cant that is provided in the field. So theoretical superelevation or theoretical cant is a sum of actual superelevation provided in the field plus the deviation or the cant efficiency. So this theoretical superelevation is calculated based on the maximum permissible speed, whereas the actual superelevation is calculated based on the average or equilibrium speed. So this we can also call by the name equilibrium cant. What is equilibrium cant? It is when the lateral forces and wheel loads are almost equal, the cant is said to be in equilibrium. It is provided on the basis of average speed of trains. So the deviation between the theoretical and the actual cant becomes a cant efficiency. Once again, I want to make the term cant efficiency very clear to you. Cant efficiency, it is the difference between the theoretical superelevation and the actual superelevation. So this cant and superelevation, these terms are used synonymously. So don't get confused between these two. And in some textbook, instead of E, because I am not using the notation E for representing superelevation or cant, whereas in some textbook you can see instead of E they are using C. So they may write as cant efficiency as CD. So again, don't get confused with that too. So cant efficiency is the difference between the theoretical superelevation and the actual superelevation. So what is a theoretical superelevation? We can also call that as a required superelevation. Okay. So if you consider a particular route, okay, theoretical superelevation is the one that is calculated based on the maximum speed, whereas the actual one or the equilibrium superelevation is calculated based on the average speed, because there can be trains running very fast and there can be trains running very slow. So we have to have a compromise between these two, and the average value will be selected, and based on that we will design a superelevation which becomes the actual superelevation or the equilibrium superelevation. So the difference between the theoretical and the actual, or the difference between the required and the equilibrium value, becomes the cant efficiency. Okay, so the cant efficiency, what should be the limiting reasons for this cant efficiency? Can we simply reduce the theoretical superelevation? To what extent can we reduce this theoretical superelevation? So there are two reasons, or the cant efficiency is limited due to two reasons. So the main aim of providing superelevation is to counteract the effect of centrifugal force that we all know. Okay, so what happens? Cant efficiency is we are reducing the superelevation that is actually required. So once we are doing that, it may result in higher discomfort to the passengers, because the centrifugal force will increase there and this will create discomfort to the passenger. Another reason is by providing superelevation, the wheel load on both the rails will be equally distributed. Whereas if we go on reducing this value, or if the cant efficiency increases, then that may result in, or that will cause extra pressure and lateral force on the outer rail, which may lead to wear and tear of the outer rail. So because of these two reasons, cant efficiency need to be limited. So based on the gauge, so broad gauge, the maximum cant efficiency that we can provide is 7.6 centimeter, whereas meter gauge it is 5.1 centimeter, and narrow gauge it is 3.8 centimeter. So cant efficiency is nothing but it is the difference between the maximum permissible superelevation and the actual superelevation. Hope this concept is clear to you. I'm going to introduce you a new concept, that is a negative superelevation. So do you have any guess what is this negative superelevation? So let's consider this particular track. There are two lines deviating in two different directions. Okay, so let's consider this one which is going to the right hand side. Okay, so here this line becomes the outer rail and this will be the inner rail, right? So the outer rail should be raised with respect to the inner rail, so that the left hand side rail should be raised with respect to the right hand side rail, right? Whereas if you consider the track which is deviating in the opposite direction, so what should be done? This becomes the outer rail and this becomes the inner rail. So with respect to that, we have to raise this rail with respect to the inner rail. So there are two contrary conditions. So how can we satisfy these two conditions together? So negative superelevation is one way of having a compromise between these two conditions. So this usually occurs when a branch line diverges out of a main line which are of contrary flexure. So let's consider this. When the main line is on a curve, this main line is on a curve and has a turnout of contrary flexure leading to the branch line. The superelevation necessary for the average speed of trains running over the main line cannot be provided. So in that case, we have to have a compromise. So let's consider this particular section AB. So with respect to AB, these two tracks are deviating in two different directions. So let's first of all consider the main track. Okay, in the main track, if you consider the track or the rail AC, okay, which is the outer rail, and BD is the inner rail. So usually in superelevation, what we do, we will provide the outer rail at a higher level compared to that of the inner rail. So with respect to main track, A should be at a higher level when compared to that of B. Whereas let's consider the other condition for the branch track, where AE becomes the inner rail and BF becomes the outer rail. So with respect to the branch line, what should we do? B should be raised with respect to A. So these are two contrary conditions and we cannot meet these two conditions at the same time simultaneously. So we have to have a compromise. So what we usually do is we give importance to the main track and the outer rail we are providing a superelevation. Thereby what we are doing is the rail BF for the branch line is kept at a lower level than the inner rail, and this is what is known as superelevation. Okay. So when doing so, we have to restrict the speed in this both the main track as well as in the branch line. So the design or the negative superelevation design, mainly we have to see the calculation of the speed restrictions on main track as well as the branch line. So that is what is negative superelevation design, which we will be seeing in the coming slides. Let's consider the same layout as in the previous case. We have a main line and branch line. Both are deviating in two different directions, or I can say they are having contrary flexures. So let's consider this particular point AB. Okay, let's consider this section with respect to the branch line as well as with respect to the main line. So with respect to the branch line, okay, B becomes the outer rail. So B should be raised with respect to the inner rail. Right? Whereas if you go to the main line, okay, A becomes the outer rail and B becomes the inner rail. So A should be at a higher level with respect to the inner rail. So these two are contradictory conditions, and in the same layout, it is difficult for us to meet these two conditions together. So in that case, we have to have a compromise there. So we compromise the superelevation for the branch line with respect to that of the main line. So let's see what are the design steps involved in this. So what we have here is, usually in the question either the restricted speed on branch line or main line will be given to you, and you will be asked to find what will be the restricted speed on the other line. So if the restricted speed on the branch line is given to you, and then you will be asked to find what should be the permitted speed on the main line, we can see what are the design steps involved in that. So let's see, or let's assume the restricted speed on branch line and calculate the theoretical superelevation on the branch line. So restricted speed will be given, like say for example branch line, the maximum permissible speed will be 35 km per hour is what is given in the question. So we know this particular speed, based on which we will be calculating the theoretical superelevation. And again, once we get that, you can calculate the superelevation to be provided on the branch line. So we are getting the theoretical superelevation. So the actual super elevation to be provided on the branch line will be the difference between the theoretical super elevation and the Kant efficiency. So we have seen that there should be some limit for this Kant efficiency that we can provide depending upon the gauge. So depending on the gauge, we have to finalize what should be the Kant efficiency, and we have to deviate from this theoretical super elevation depending on the Kant efficiency, and the difference between these two will give the actual super elevation that we are providing in the field. Then once we get the actual super elevation on the branch line, what will be the permitted super elevation on main track? It will be just the opposite of that. So actual super elevation on main line becomes the negative of the super elevation on branch line. Why it is called as negative super elevation means we are compromising the super elevation on the branch line. So with respect to branch line, B should be raised with respect to A, but we are compromising that and we are giving importance to the main line and we are raising A with respect to B. That is why it is known as negative super elevation for the branch line. So if we are providing a super elevation like this, it will be a negative super elevation for the branch line. So that is why the actual super elevation we calculate becomes the negative super elevation for the branch line, and the actual super elevation for the main line will be the opposite of that. So once you get the actual super elevation on the main line, what will be the theoretical super elevation? It will be the sum of actual super elevation and the Kant efficiency. So once you get the theoretical super elevation, from that you can find what will be the restricted speed on the main line. So finally you will get the restricted speed on the main line. So that is one way of doing this. So if the restricted speed on branch line is given and you are asked to find the restricted speed on main line, first step that you have to do is you have to first of all find the theoretical super elevation on the branch line and find the actual super elevation on the branch line, and from which this actual super elevation on the branch line becomes the actual super elevation on the main line, provided it will be the negative value of this, and the theoretical super elevation on the main line need to be calculated, and when substituting you will get the maximum permitted speed on the main line. So these are the design steps involved. Let's do a numerical example. Okay. So what is given in the question? There is a 6-degree curve. 6-degree curve. It branches from a 3-degree main curve. Okay. So branch line is 6 degree and main line is 3-degree curve. They are branching out in opposite direction. Okay. In the layout of a broad gauge yard, if the speed of the branch line is restricted to 35 km per hour, so the speed on the branch line is given, it is restricted to 35 km per hour. If it is restricted to 35 km per hour, you are asked to determine the restricted speed on the main line. One more condition is provided in the question. The Kant efficiency permitted is 75 mm, or the maximum deviation permitted from the theoretical super elevation is 75 mm. So let's do this problem. So what are the steps involved in this? This is a layout. There is a main line and there is a branch line. They are of contrary flexures, and the specifications of these two curves are also given to you. So let's do this problem. So what is given? It's a broad gauge track. So the gauge is 1.676 meters. Then let's first of all consider the branch line. So for the branch line, what is the degree given to you? It is 6 degree. Okay. So what will be the radius? The equation we have studied. It is 1750 divided by the degree. So the radius on the branch line, or the radius of the branch line, is 292 meters. And in a similar way, you can find what is the radius of the main line. Okay. So that is the first step involved. Then what else to be done once you are getting involved in calculating the super elevation when a branch line is deviating from a main line? Okay. What is given in the question? In the question, it is given as the maximum restricted speed on branch line is what is given. It's given as 35 km per hour. So we know the speed in the branch line So with respect to that, we can calculate the theoretical superelevation in the branch line. So that is the first step involved. We have to calculate the theoretical cant on the branch line, keeping in mind the maximum restricted speed in the branch line. Okay. So I'll explain this notation. What is written here? E is superelevation, and you have a subscript and a superscript. So T becomes a subscript, which means theoretical. So the theoretical superelevation for the branch line. So the superscript, it represents the branch or main line. So here this term represents the theoretical superelevation or theoretical cant for the branch line is given by the equation GV square by 1.27 R if you want the superelevation in centimeters. Whereas if you want that in meters, it becomes GV square by 127 R, where this V is the speed of the train or the maximum restricted speed in the branch line, and R is the radius of the branch line. So when substituting that, G is given as the broad gauge. So when substituting G to be 1.676, you will be getting this particular equation. We have already derived the superelevation equation for a broad gauge track. It is 1.315 V square by R. Okay. So what is given? The maximum restricted speed in the branch line is 35 km per hour. So you can substitute that for V. And the radius, we found that to be 292 meters. You will be getting the theoretical superelevation in the branch line, which becomes 5.54 centimeters. So once you get that, and what else is given in the question? The maximum permissible cant is also given as 7.5 centimeters, right? So if these two values is known to you, you can find the actual superelevation. So actual superelevation is the difference between the theoretical superelevation and the cant efficiency. Okay, so how can I find the actual superelevation on the branch line? Actual superelevation on the branch line will be the difference between the theoretical superelevation and the cant efficiency. So the cant efficiency permitted is 7.5. So taking difference, you will be getting minus 1.96 centimeters. That is why it is known as negative superelevation. So once we get that, what is actually this negative sign indicating? The negative sign indicates that the outer rail is 1.96 centimeter lower than the inner rail. But actually superelevation means outer rail should be at a higher level than the inner rail. But since it is negative superelevation, the negative sign indicates the outer rail is at a lower level than the inner rail. That is why it is called negative superelevation condition. So once you get that, the next step involved is you have to find the actual superelevation on the main line will be just the opposite of the superelevation in the branch line. So it's negative of superelevation in the branch line. So what happens? It is negative of negative superelevation, which becomes 1.96 centimeters. Once you get that, you can find the theoretical superelevation in the main lines, which will be the sum of actual superelevation and the cant efficiency. So when you take the sum of these two, you will be getting 9.46 centimeter to be the theoretical or the required value in the main line. Then once we get the theoretical superelevation, based on that we can consider what will be the permitted speed. So how much speed can we permit on the main line? That depends upon the theoretical superelevation. Okay, that again is dependent on the theoretical superelevation of the main line is dependent on the elevation that we are providing on the branch line. So the permitted speed on the main line, you can substitute again in the same equation for the superelevation for a broad gauge track. If you are substituting that, you will be getting the restricted or the permitted speed on main line. You can substitute these values. The superelevation is 9.46 centimeter. We already found the radius value is 584 meters,
and from which we can find what is speed. So finally the value of B is 65 km per hour. So what we can say, if the speed on the branch line is 35 km per hour, corresponding layout, for the same layout, the corresponding speed on the main line should be restricted to 65 km per hour. So for the same layout, we have to have a compromise for the speed value on the branch line as well as the main line. So these are the design steps involved for negative superelevation layout.
It's just the reverse of the previous problem. In the previous problem, what is given to us? The speed on the branch line is given and we are asked to find the speed on the main line. Whereas in this problem, the speed on the main line is given to us and asked to find the restricted speed on the branch line. So we have to just reverse the steps that is involved. So first of all, we know the restricted speed on the main line. Based on that, what we can do, we can find the theoretical superelevation on the main line. So once you get the theoretical superelevation on main line, the actual superelevation will be the difference between the theoretical superelevation and the Kant efficiency. Once you get the actual superelevation on the main track, the actual superelevation on the branch line will be the negative of the superelevation provided on the main line. Why it is said so? I told you, at section AB, with respect to the branch line, B should be raised with respect to A, whereas with respect to main line, A should be raised with respect to B. So these two conditions are contradictory in nature and we have to have a compromise between these two, and we are compromising the superelevation on the branch line, and we are actually providing superelevation as per the requirement for the main line, where the outer rail is raised with respect to the inner rail. So this becomes a negative superelevation for the branch line. Okay, so the opposite of that becomes the superelevation for the main line. That is why we are putting here the negative superelevation, or the actual superelevation on the branch line will be the negative of, or just the opposite of, the superelevation provided on the main line. So once we get the actual superelevation on branch line, theoretical superelevation will be the sum of actual superelevation and the Kant efficiency. So based on this theoretical superelevation or the required superelevation, we can calculate the restricted speed on the branch line. Okay, so these were the design steps involved. We can do a problem based on this. So let's do this problem. So what is given here? A 8-degree curve is diverging from a main curve of 5 degree. Both are in opposite directions. They have contrary flexures. It's a broad gauge yard. Okay. The superelevation. So what is asked? The superelevation and the speed on the branch line need to be calculated, provided the maximum permitted speed on the main line is 45 km per hour. So let's do this problem. This 1.676 is the gauge for the broad gauge track. We can find the radius of curve for the branch line as well as the radius for the main line. Okay, so when that is being done, what will be the next step? The next step involved is we are provided with the values for the main curve or the main track, and we are asked to find the values for the branch track. So let's do that. Right, about the Kant efficiency, so we have to consider the limiting Kant efficiency value, which is 7.6 centimeter for the broad gauge track. So let's first consider step by step. What is the first step? So the theoretical Kant on main line we have to calculate based on the maximum speed that is given. So the maximum speed given is 45 km per hour, and we have also found the radius of main line. So when substituting that, you will be getting the theoretical superelevation on the main line. We are getting that to be 7.6 centimeters, right? The second step is we have to calculate the actual superelevation in the main line. So the actual super elevation on the main line is the difference between the theoretical super elevation and Kant efficiency. So what should be this Kant efficiency? When nothing is specified in the question, we have to consider the limiting value. So the Kant efficiency, the limiting value of Kant efficiency for a broad gauge track is 7.6 centimeter, which you can substitute, so that what you will be getting the actual super elevation on the main line, we are getting that to be 0. So what is the next step? So once you get the actual super elevation, for the branch line becomes the negative of negative value, which is again 0 only. So then you can find the theoretical super elevation for the branch line will be sum of actual super elevation and Kant efficiency for the branch line. Again, it is a broad gauge track, so Kant efficiency you can consider to be 7.6 centimeter. Substituting that, you will be getting the theoretical super elevation for the branch line to be 7.6 centimeter, which you can use to find the permitted speed on branch line. So we can use the super elevation equation for a broad gauge track. Substituting that, we can find the speed on the branch line, which is 35.5 km per hour. So these are the two ways of doing or finding the speed on either on main line or restricted line if the other value is provided to us. So let's have a comparison between the equilibrium Kant, Kant efficiency and Kant excess. So foremost, let us explain what is equilibrium Kant. Equilibrium Kant is a condition. So we all know that to counteract the effect of centrifugal force, the outer rail is raised with respect to the inner rail. So equilibrium Kant is that Kant where the resultant of the centrifugal force and the weight, the resultant will be acting perpendicular to the plane connecting the top of these two rails. So this particular condition is the equilibrium Kant where the load carried by both the wheels will be the same. Or I can say in other words, the springs will be equally compressed so that the passenger sitting inside will not tend to lean in either direction. So this will offer him or her a better seating position. So this condition is what is known as the equilibrium Kant, where the load carried by both the wheels will be the same and the resultant will be acting perpendicular to the plane connecting the top surface of the rail. So what then the speed corresponding to this equilibrium Kant or equilibrium super elevation is what is known as the equilibrium speed. So there arises another condition where the train is traveling at a speed higher than this equilibrium speed. So what happens? If the train is traveling at a speed higher than that, the super elevation thus provided becomes insufficient. So that becomes Kant deficient situation. So for at higher speeds, the centrifugal force will not be counterbalanced by the super elevation provided, thus resulting in the overturning of vehicles. So in this particular condition, the force against the outer rail will be more than that of the inner rail, and the Kant become insufficient, or the Kant will be deficient if the speed with which the train negotiating the curve is more than that of the equilibrium speed. Then arises another condition where a train is running at a speed lower than this equilibrium speed. Okay, so when the at lower speed than the equilibrium speed, what happens here? In this condition, the super elevation provided become excess because it is running at a lower speed. So actually the super elevation required will be less than the equilibrium super elevation. So if we are providing equilibrium super elevation for the trains at lower speed, it becomes an excess, or it's a Kant excess situation. So this can result in tilt of vehicle to the inner side will be more than the centrifugal force, which may result in the derailment of the vehicle. So these are the three conditions. The equilibrium Kant, where the effect of centrifugal forces counterbalanced, whereas in these two cases there is unbalanced force acting over the vehicle. Okay, so what are its effects? The passengers inside, they may lean to both direction according to whether it is at a higher speed or at a lower speed. Again, that may result in a unbalanced distribution of force over the outer and inner rail, and again the chances of derailment and overturning will be more in these two cases. So that is regarding Cant deficiency and Cant excess condition compared to that of the equilibrium Cant. So let's see the effect of superelevation on the load distribution. For the equilibrium superelevation condition, the centrifugal force is balanced, so there will be no unbalanced lateral acceleration. Thereby, the pressure on both the wheel's inner and outer rails will be the same. Whereas in the case where the speed is higher, when the speed is higher, that will lead to an underbalance situation where the Cant provided won't be sufficient enough to balance the centrifugal force thus created, because we know that as the speed increases, the centrifugal force also increases, right? So because of this, what happens, there will be unbalanced lateral acceleration which will be acting outward. Thereby, the pressure on the outer rail will be more than the inner rail. Then there is another situation where it is running at a lower speed compared to that of the equilibrium speed. In that situation, it is an overbalance situation where the Cant provided will be excess. So this will lead to unbalanced lateral acceleration in the inward direction. So when this is in the inward direction, what happens is the pressure exerted over the inner rail will be more than that of the outer rail, and again there can be chances of derailment when the speed is lower than that of the equilibrium speed. So when the speed is high, it will be leading to a Cant deficient situation, whereas when the speed is less than that of the equilibrium speed, it is leading to a Cant excess situation. Okay, hope these three concepts are clear to you. The next portion that we are going to see is the transition curve. So we have already studied the transition curve and its speciality. So transition curves, it act as a transition from one section to the other. So these are provided when a straight portion meets with a circular curve. So you can see here, when a straight track meets with a circular track, these can be connected by means of a transition curve. It can be another case where two branches of compound curve can be connected by the transition curve. Then what happens here? The radius decrease. In this case, the first case, the radius decreases from infinity at the tangent point to the radius of the circular curve. So it is also known as the spiral or Eastman curve. Why it is called Eastman curve? Because what happens here, a transition curve, it's a cure for an uncomfortable ride in which the degree of the curvature and the gain of superelevation are uniform throughout its length, starting from infinity to the radius of the circular curve when it meets the circular curve. So that is regarding the transition curve. So here you can see like how it is getting reduced. So depending on that, we can have different shapes of the transition curves that we will see in the next slides. The primary objective of providing transition curve is to reduce the radius of curvature gradually from infinity at the tangent point or at the straight portion to a specified value at the circular curve. And again, another purpose is to have a gradual introduction of superelevation. So these are the primary objectives of providing transition curve. Then secondary objective is thereby it offers a comfortable and smooth ride to the passengers, and there won't be any sudden application or release of force, and hence the chances of derailment can be reduced. So what are the requirements of ideal transition curve? It should be perfectly tangential to the straight portion, and curvature of the transition curve should conform with that of the circular curve. Then length of the transition curve should be such that the curvature may increase at the same rate as that of the super elevation, and transition curve should join the circular curve tangentially. Okay, so these are the primary requirements of the transition curve. So let's see the different types of transition curve. This is a spiral curve. Another one is Bernoulli's lemniscate. A third type is a cubic parabola. So let's compare these three by means of its advantages and disadvantages. So when comparing the spiral curve, it's also known by the name Euler's spiral curve. So the rate of change of acceleration is uniform, and it has the ideal satisfies all the requirements of transition curve. Thereby it makes an ideal curve. But even though it is an ideal curve, it is not preferred due to its mathematical complications and difficulty in setting out in the field. And next type is the Bernoulli's lemniscate. So here the radius decreases as the length increases, but the problem is the radial acceleration also goes on falling. But the problem is the fall is not uniform beyond 30-degree deflection angle, and because of which these curves are not being used on railways. And third is the cubic parabola. It is preferably used in Indian railways. Both the curvature and cant increases at a linear rate. The cant of the transition curve from the straight to the curved track is so arranged that the inner rail, it continues to be at the same level, while the outer rail is raised in the linear form throughout the length of the curve. Thereby, a straight line ramp is provided for such transition curves. So cubic parabola is preferred over the other types. Now let's see the length of the transition curve and how Indian Railway is calculating the length. So the length is measured along the central line of the track from where it is meeting the straight portion to where it meets the circular curve. So this much portion is the length of the transition curve. So the length is fixed based on three criteria. Let's see what are they. Empirical formula have been laid down for determining the length of transition curve. So three approaches or three factors are taken care for deciding the length of the transition curve. First one is the maximum cant gradient that is provided, assuming that to be 1 in 720. So based on which the length of super elevation becomes 7.2 times the actual super elevation that is provided. So E is the actual super elevation. In some textbooks you can find here CA, which represents actual cant. Okay. So instead of E, some textbooks provide that to be CA. Okay, CA. So which is the actual cant. Then next, based on the rate of change of super elevation, the equation, you don't have to know the derivation, you just simply study these equations. Okay, so based on the rate of change of super elevation, the length of transition curve required is 0.073 super elevation into Vmax. Vmax is the maximum permitted speed in that particular route. Here again E is the actual cant. So in some textbooks, instead of this E, they may be using CA. Okay, CA is same as the actual cant or E. Okay. Then next is the third criteria is based on the rate of change of cant efficiency. So ED is cant efficiency. Some textbooks again you can see that to be CD instead of this ED. So don't get confused with these equations. Okay. So based on the rate of change of cant efficiency, L is again given as 0.073 into the cant efficiency multiplied by the maximum permitted speed. Okay. So the three criteria that are considered as, the first one is based on the maximum cant gradient. It is usually to be 1 in 720, and the second and third one is based on the rate of gain of cant or cant efficiency. So based on these three factors we will find the transition curve. These empirical formulas are used to find the length of transition curve, and of these three the highest value will be preferred. Okay. Of these three, we will consider the highest values. Safe speed means a speed which protects a carriage from the danger of overturning and derailment and provides a certain margin of safety. So there are different means of calculating it, and the various factors that influences the speed or the safe speed for a wagon to negotiate a curve include first is the gauge of the track, the radius of the curve, the presence or absence of the transition curve, the amount of super elevation provided, and again where the center of gravity is located. Okay, so based on all these factors, we can calculate the safe speed for the carriage or for the vehicles of the rolling stock to negotiate a circular curve. Safe speed calculated by Martin's formula. Okay, as I told you, for all practical purposes, safe speed means a speed which protects the carriage from the danger of overturning and derailment. Okay, so Martin has formulated the safe speed. It's an empirical relationship. Empirical means we cannot logically prove it. It's based on data. Based on the data, we are trying to establish a relationship between the various parameters. So that is empirical formula. So Martin has given empirical formula for safe speed. So for two conditions, one is when the transition curve is present, and the another one is when the transition curve is absent. So when the transition curve is present for broad gauge and meter gauge, this is the safe speed which depends upon the radius of the curve. Again, narrow gauge, the value will be lower than that of the broad gauge and meter gauge. Okay, R is the radius of the curve in meters, and here you are getting the speed in kilometer per hour. Whereas if it is absent, the transition curve is absent, the speed is reduced by 20%. So these equations are modified as is 4 by 5 times this value, and for narrow gauge it is again 20% of the value where it has got a transition curve. But it has got a problem because it is an empirical relationship. Indian Railways no longer uses this concept of safe speed on curves. All the stipulations given here is old practice and not being used nowadays. The earlier formula, the Martin's formula, they are empirical relationships. Okay, so later it has been revised, where this empirical formula has been changed by applying formula based on theoretical considerations as per the recommendations given by the engineers as well as ACRS. So let's see what are those equations. It's a theoretical formula, the broad gauge track. The safe speed is given by this particular equation. I told you CA. Why I have used this particular notation is you should be aware of these two. Okay, so CA is nothing but it is the actual count. It's same as EA. Okay, some textbooks they are giving as CA or EA, both are same only. So this is the actual count and this is the count efficiency CD. Okay, and for meter gauge, the theoretical formula is again this coefficient changes for a meter gauge track. Okay, where V is the maximum speed in kilometer per hour, CA is the actual count in millimeters, CD is the count efficiency in millimeters, and R is the radius in meters. So if we are substituting these values, or the unit should be consistent, then you will be getting the V in kilometer per hour. So this is the theoretical formula now Indian Railway is using. Whereas for narrow gauge track, subjected to a maximum speed of 50 km per hour, this is the particular equation that we are using. Okay, so you can see what's the difference between these two. Here we are considering the concept of the count provided as well as the count efficiency, whereas narrow gauge we are not providing it. It is the earlier Martin's formula itself. Okay. When providing this theoretical revised formula, we are including the concept of count, actual count, and the count efficiency into the or incorporating this into the theoretical formula. The maximum permissible speed, it is calculated based on 4 concepts. These we have already described, but let's see how the safe speed or maximum safe speed is calculated. 4 criteria is considered. The maximum permissible speed is a 1, which is the minimum speed from the 4 criteria. So we will calculate the speed based on these 4 criteria, and the minimum of this will give the maximum permissible speed in that particular segment of railway. So the first condition is the maximum sanctioned speed of the section. The second thing we consider is the maximum speed taking into consideration of Kant efficiency. The third one, considering the maximum speed taking into consideration of Kant excess. And fourth one, it is corresponding to the length of transition curve. So the maximum sanctioned speed of the section, this is the maximum permissible speed authorized by the Commission of Railway Safety. Okay. This is determined after an analysis of the condition of the track, the interlocking condition, the type of locomotive, the rolling stock used, and other factors. So considering all these factors, the person in charge or the Commissioner of Railway Safety, he will give a maximum sanction speed. So even though we consider other theoretical concepts, the Commissioner of the Railway Safety, he is authorized to decide on the maximum sanction speed. Okay. So the maximum permissible speed will be the minimum value of these 3 criteria. So the maximum sanction speed is fixed by the Railway Board or the Commissioner of Railway Safety. The maximum sanction speed of the rail section is first of all determined by the Railway Safety Board. Okay. So Railway Safety Commission will be authorized with that. He will have an inspection of the track and he will consider all these factors like condition of track, condition of the interlocking, then the type of locomotive, the type of rolling stock, and other such factors will be considered, and based on which they will give a maximum permissible speed with which the trains can run. Even though we consider the other factors, finally they have the authority to decide on the maximum permissible speed. We have already seen the equation for Kant efficiency and Kant excess. We have already discussed that. Okay. So the second and third condition for finding the maximum permissible speed is based on Kant efficiency concept and based on Kant excess concept. So let's combine these two and then define the equations. So Kant efficiency is critical for trains which are faster than the equilibrium speed, which is running faster than the equilibrium speed. So for high speed trains, Kant efficiency is calculated or is found. Okay. Whereas Kant excess happens when the trains are running at a speed slower than that of the equilibrium speed. So this usually happens for a slow moving traffic or goods train. The equilibrium Kant provided will be excess for them. So in that case, Kant excess will be calculated, and if we know Kant efficiency and Kant excess, then the safe speed for broad gauge, meter gauge and narrow gauge can be calculated using the earlier relationship, the theoretical relationship we have seen. After Martin's equation, there was a theoretical relationship between the speed and the actual Kant efficiency and radius of curve. This we have already discussed, right? So that particular equation will be used. Here CA is the actual Kant. Then CD, it can be either Kant efficient condition or it can be Kant excess condition, depending upon the speed with which the trains are running in a route. So if it is mostly high speed trains running in a route, then we have to calculate the Kant efficient situation, and if there are slow moving vehicle running in a particular route, we have to consider the Kant excess situation. So this CD can be either Kant efficient or Kant excess situation in millimeters. R is the radius in meters, and again CA is the actual Kant. So earlier I was using the notation EA. So I can to make it familiar to you, I am using here CA. It is nothing but EA itself, actual Kant. So CD is same as ED, Kant efficient. Okay. And for narrow gauge, this Kant has not been considered. It is simply the speed is calculated based on the radius of the curve. So the maximum permissible speed is calculated based on 4 criteria, as I already told you this. One is based on the sanctioned speed decided by the Railway Safety Board, and the second and third condition depends upon the whether it is Kant efficient situation or Kant excess situation, and fourth one is based on the length of transition curve. So let's see that. So depending upon the length of the transition curve, the least value of speed calculated after taking into consideration the various lengths of the transition curve. Okay, so I have simplified that and put it in a tabular form. So criteria for length of transition curve: when the rate of change of Kant, so the rate is 35 millimeter per second for normal cases and 55 millimeter per second for exceptional cases. So the first criteria, we are considering that to be the rate of change of Kant. So if this is the situation, the desirable length of transition curve is given as Vm by 125. Okay, whereas the desirable one is this. If we cannot provide this, then the minimum, at least this much we have to provide. So the minimum required one is Vm by 198. Okay. Then the second concept is based on the rate of change of Kant efficiency. So we have already discussed this when discussing the length of transition curve. The length of transition curve is decided based on the rate of change of Kant as well as rate of change of Kant efficiency. So these two concepts is being incorporated to find the desirable length of transition curve. So based on rate of change of Kant efficiency, the desirable length of transition curve is given as CD into Vm by 125, where Vm is the maximum permissible speed in kilometer per hour, CD is the Kant efficiency in millimeter. Here again CA is the actual Kant in millimeter. Okay. So this should be the desirable value. If we cannot provide this, then the minimum to be provided is CD Vm by 198. So from consideration of Kant gradient, this also we had discussed earlier, Kant gradient should not exceed 1 in 720. Okay. So this is the desirable one, and if we cannot provide this, the minimum to be provided is it should not exceed 1 in 364 broad gauge, and it should not exceed 1 in 724 meter gauge and narrow gauge. So these are the conditions for finding the safe speed based on the length of transition curve. Okay, so we can see here this is how the transition curve is provided from the straight portion to the circular portion. So it is the length of transition curve is given based on three concepts. One is the rate at which the Kant is provided. Sometimes we cannot provide the theoretical Kant there. We have to reduce that is the Kant efficiency. So we have to consider the condition of rate of change of Kant efficiency. And third one, what should be the rate at which, or the Kant gradient, it should not exceed 1 in 720. So based on these three conditions, we can find the length of transition curve. So that's all for today's video. Thank you.